Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's icy cold, and the snow melted, and then it refroze, and so now there is a place to skid and fall. So I'm going to do my best to balance, and if I fail, I'll try to capture it on film so you can enjoy it. I've always been fascinated by Darwin. When I was a kid and we went upstate New York, there was a demonstration, a little diorama of the evolution of man. And so I was fascinated by that, and I asked my dad, and he gave me a fairly clear description of it, and I was just puzzled by it. Well, years later, and I've done a lot of reading on it, perhaps you have as well, and it's a theory that has held up. But Dr. Leakey, who just died, had a theory that I've been espousing for years without any research. Leakey, who found tools which suggested man could think, and the same rule, by the way, has been applied to chimpanzees, that if they could make tools, it shows that the process of thinking is greater. Now, we do have among us those hominids who evidence an inability to think very well. So how do you reconcile that with the evolution of the species? And Leakey had a very interesting way about that. He found fossils that suggested that, quote, men, who are the precursors to modern men, existed in various stages of evolution. In other words, it wasn't a straight line. And so my expression of how evolution works is there are among us those who have evolved, but contemporaneously there are those who are devolving. And that is represented by a large segment of the Republican Party. And there's a section, and we don't know the size, but we will find out in time, if it's a quieter, larger segment that is evolving. And once we work our way through that, democracy will be safe. But in the meantime, we're not. Manchin, I can't believe people are still talking about this guy. I mean, it's pretty clear he never intended to do anything, is not going to do anything, is not doing anything. And they've been chasing him for, why won't you agree to your $1.8 trillion agreement? And people forget, he agreed to that on like a Thursday. And by a Sunday, he was on Fox TV saying, no, I'm not for any of that. And then he was called a liar, and then he and Biden had a private conversation. And I suspect that the intervening event was particularly about his position on the environment. And the people who brought him to the dance said, you're not going for that. We don't want that. Stop that right now. So that's the end of Manchin on that. And I'd be as surprised if we ever see him agree to a cloture vote, whether or not it's connected to voting rights. And I think as a party and our leadership should have realistic approaches to these questions, not say what they think we want to hear and then disappoint us, like, oh, it's the Republicans' fault. Well, in this case, it's the Democrats' fault, or a belief system, or a pressured system that do not concur with what a lot of other people want. And there are things that we can do, and we're not doing them. And among them are finding Republicans with a spine. Now, Thune, who's a senator from South Dakota, is running for re-election. And why is that important? Because if he is re-elected, there is a chance that if the Republicans take over the Senate, that he may become the majority leader. Why is that important? Well, he opposed Trump, and Trump opposes him. So that would be a development in the right direction if we Democrats couldn't get our act together and continue to control, well, control is a strong word, isn't it? Continue to have some control in the Senate as to chairmanships and so forth. The question of schools, I support the Chicago teachers and those parents who say, we're not going to school until it's safe. We're on notice that for the next couple of weeks, all hell is breaking loose with Omicron. And the tortured reasoning for going to school and going to work in high contact positions is we want you to go to school and we want you to go to work. Well, and to get ill and to overrun our hospitals? No. And it's hard, having given among the faithful such a sacrifice for self-preservation, but it remains sensible and it remains the one thing that works when others do not work. I'm also thinking about my podcast today. The weather and some other things have limited my schedule somewhat with the animals and things, but I'm going to try to make a short statement about why basically we're being misled by our Attorney General and President Biden if we think that they're going to do a damn thing about prosecuting the people in the White House or on the Hill or the people in between other than the rioters. And the one thing I can't repeat enough, because maybe I'm not making myself clear, although I'm seeing other prosecutors are saying it too. And I'm not going to say now, because I would think if anybody asked them the question at any time, they would have said the same thing I'm saying. And it is this: when you work up in a conspiracy, the way you do it usually is somebody in the inner circle at the top of the conspiracy comes forward. And when I was a puppy prosecutor and put on a securities case, there was a person who cooperated who, after he committed the crime and hid his money, came in to cooperate. That's how it happens. Some guy on the street who waved a flag on January the 6th, who had 7 intermediate people who brought him there, he is not the guy who's going to break this case wide open. Well, what will? Memos, cell phones, email, statements by people that they stupidly bragged to, and people who thought when they were in the White House they were doing the wrong thing. People who have written books that have admitted it. That's how you make this case. You do not go to some guy who held a Confederate flag and ran across a floor in the Capitol and maybe defecated somewhere and expect him to give you Bannon. That's not going to happen. But an oath keeper who was standing with, people stoned during the action on January the 6th, well, that person probably could give us information. And here's the kicker. Not one person, not one, you can take it to the bank, has been interviewed who is in any of those categories other than rioters. Not one. And there are plenty who should have been talked to, and they should have been talked to days after Biden raised his hand and was sworn in. So I'm not among my trees because I'm on a road with less ice, and I will hopefully be back on that road tomorrow or a similar one. So have a good Sunday. Be careful out there if you're in the icy water that we have up here that's freezing tonight. All the best. Bye-bye.